Welcome, everyone. Simon Rosenberg, Hopium Chronicles, back with a special event today. Not just a really good event, but a special event. We're joined by Senator Tim Kaine, who's just had a big week. Senator, welcome. Thanks for being with us today.
Simon, always good to be with you, man. Thanks.
So listen, last week, you were the lead in getting your Republican colleagues to vote with the Democrats to repeal 3 times in 3 separate votes what we call Trump's terrible tariffs is the line that we use here. Can you just talk to us a little bit about how this came about, what you think the significance is, how it was that you were able to bring Republicans along with you and rebuke the president on something that's so central to his agenda?
Simon, the tariffs that Donald Trump has imposed or largely imposed, as you know, under this International Emergency Powers Act, IEPA. And IEPA has a provision where a senator, just a single senator, can force a challenge to the emergency, to the declared emergency. And you challenge the emergency, not the underlying actions taken pursuant to the emergency. But when you challenge the emergency, it's called a privileged motion. You're guaranteed a floor vote within 10 days. It can't be filibuster, can't be sent to a committee and killed. You're guaranteed a floor vote. So I have been challenging virtually anything I can that this president has done where I can do it by privileged motion. 6 months ago, I challenged the president's Canada tariffs and the global Liberation Day tariffs. And I noticed in those 2 challenges, I got 4 Republicans to go with me. And Simon, that was when the tariffs had been announced, but before they had bit into people's pocketbooks. And I told everybody, folks, I'm coming back in 6 months and I'm going to do it again. IEPA requires the president to re-up the emergency every 6 months. And every time the president does, you get to challenge the emergency again. So last week, I challenged Canada and Liberation Day tariffs for the 2nd time, but now with real-world experience of the pain being caused. And I challenged the Brazil tariffs for the 1st time, arguing, as you know, that Brazil's prosecution of a corrupt former president who's a friend of Donald Trump's is in no way, shape, or form an emergency for the United States. And I was very gratified that on all 3 of those votes, we had one Tuesday, one Wednesday, one Thursday, I got enough Republican votes to pass the resolutions. 4 votes on Canada and global tariffs, 5 votes on Brazil. And this is my effort to basically force the Republicans as often as I can, whether it's a tariff or war or a weapons transfer or an energy emergency. I want to force them as much as I can to have to own or disown the actions that Donald Trump is taking that are hurting their constituents. And I'm starting to get more Republicans willing to stand up and counter Trump. And the last thing I'll say about it is Trump and the White House are worried about this. They sent Vice President Vance up to kind of rally and corral the Republicans at their Tuesday lunch, knowing these 3 votes were pending. You got to stick with us. Tariffs is key to this president. Don't vote for the Kaine resolutions. And I still got 4 and 5 Republicans willing to defect and vote with me, even after the vice president tried to rattle their cage.
Yeah, I mean, it is, we've both been around here a long time. And I think this was a very significant moment because, we talk about how little cracks can become big cracks in a coalition. And all of a sudden, the people start thinking the emperor may not have any clothes or whatever that process is in your head about how you understand this. And, we've struggled really hard to create cracks in his congressional coalition. And this is, in my view, the most significant set of cracks that have happened in his coalition so far. And look, they're so worried, I think, about managing this town with these very small majorities they have, that they've kept the House out for the last month because they're worried about what they're going to do when they come back because he's lost ideological control of the House as well. And so, what this all means is that I think he's a far weaker figure than is sort of the strongman image that is often the image that voters and we see in legacy media.
I believe that to be true, Simon. And the other thing I would say is these votes were about Congress being Congress. Congressional oversight of the executive is a muscle that's atrophied through lack of use. And it's not just during the Trump administration. I think there have been a series of things, really, for generations, where Congress has handed its power to the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. I want a president to fully inhabit the Article 2 powers, but the nation needs a Congress to fully inhabit the Article 1 powers. So my working assumption when the Trump presidency started, knowing I'd have two Republican houses, I have to exercise this muscle of oversight as much as I can in order to strengthen it, because we may need Congress to save this democracy. And that will more likely be in the Senate than in the House. And because we don't have enough Democratic votes, we've got to have some Republicans who are willing to stand up for democracy and against an overreaching authoritarian president. And so this was very much a vote about tariffs, but it was also a vote about exercising this muscle of congressional oversight of an authoritarian executive. And it's good to see that that muscle is getting stronger.
Well, how do you think now that the White House has told us that they believe the War Powers Act doesn't apply to what appears by their own language, right? I mean, just taking what they're saying at face value to be the imagining of a forever war, right? A forever war that will play across, countries and throughout Latin America and even here domestically in the US. They've created, by using the Al Qaeda and war on terror analogy, which they're using now, which was our last forever war, that, is that they've now sort of made a case to us that they can conduct a forever war that has both foreign and domestic application with our military in the Pentagon without congressional authority. I mean, it seems like that may be the next big place of confrontation for exercising the oversight that you're talking about.
And I believe it is. And look, the fact that they're analogizing this to Al Qaeda, say what you want about the war on terror. It was authorized by a vote of Congress. It was not a presidential unilateral action. And yet the White House is trying to argue that these boat strikes in the Caribbean are not war that require congressional action because, let's see, we struck them from far away so
Right.
that U.S. troops weren't endangered, or they're kind of one-offs that are over and then start again 2 days later and are over. These are laughable rationale. If another nation attacked U.S. ships repeatedly, we would call it war. In fact, we did when the Barbary Coast pirates attacked U.S. ships in the Mediterranean when Thomas Jefferson was president. We viewed that as war. That's always been viewed as war. And if it's not war, what is it? Is it like batting practice or something? I mean, it's war, and you're killing people. And Donald Trump has created a secret list of groups, and he won't disclose to me and other members of my committee who's on that secret list, and has claimed unilateral power to strike folks he alleges are on that list, though we have no way of knowing whether the ships he's striking actually all have narcotics on them or not. And now he's claiming that he has the ability also to wage war against and within sovereign territory of Venezuela, although, as you know, he's gone back and forth about whether, in fact, he's going to do that. And he may have already changed his mind and decided that Nigeria needed to be the nation that we invade. Bottom line is we shouldn't be doing any of this without a debate and vote of Congress. I have a war powers resolution that says no war within or against Venezuela that will likely come up for a Senate vote this week or next. And Adam Schiff has the companion resolution about no boat strikes in international waters without a vote of Congress. We lost that a couple of weeks ago. We did get two Republicans, but as the pace of it is escalating, I believe my colleague Adam Schiff is going to reintroduce and ask for another vote on that.
Listen, I think the point you made at the very beginning, which is that it's getting harder and harder for them to defend the outrageous actions and the failed government and this unpopular leader. We just saw this rash of polls in the last few days that were on all major media, right? ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, all showing Trump as a diminished figure. And I think that I think you're right to keep pushing. I think the dynamic is changing. I mean, they are aware that, and I think one of the things that is really going to stick to the Senate and House Republicans is that we have these elections and Trump did not campaign for the candidates, nor did he spend any money on any of them, right?
Yep.
He just he hung them out to dry. And for keeping his coalition together, I think that was a huge error because it looks like he doesn't care or that he is unconcerned with the welfare of other Republicans, that it is really all about him. And I think that, that he's creating conditions where it is more likely that he's going to start having trouble in the
Yeah.
Congress because he's pushed all of you guys too far, and he's asking for too much, and he's also growing unpopular and seems unhinged and out of control.
All those things are happening. One of his great allies, Steve Bannon, has been referring to Congress as the Duma. Now, when he's saying that, he's not talking about the Democrats. He's talking about the Republican majority and basically saying to their face, you're just a rubber stamp. You're going to do what the dear leader wants. That does start to rankle my colleagues. And one of the things, Simon, is, if I allow my colleagues to get away with, I'm concerned about that, or I wish the president hadn't done it, or I would have done it differently, then they'll take that easy way out. But I force them to vote. Okay, so do you support it or not? Do you support tariffs that are raising the price of everything on your constituents? Food, building supplies, clothing, Halloween shopping, the Thanksgiving dinner that you're going to be purchasing over the next couple of weeks, energy costs, healthcare costs. Do you support what Donald Trump is doing that's jacking everything up? Or do you support your constituents? I'm not letting my colleagues get away with just expressing a concern. I'm making them vote about whether they own or disown these disastrous wrecking ball policies.
So what's your thought about the Supreme Court case? They're going to be considering the tariffs this week. It seems on the face of it, like I know the court keeps finding ways to bend the knee to him, but this one seems, taxation without representation has been pretty core principle of the of
Yeah.
our founding of our country. What's your just general thoughts about what we might
Well,
do?
first, Simon, for your listeners, it's interesting. The Supreme Court case is like the reverse side of the coin of my challenges. My challenge to the IEEPA tariffs, I can't challenge the actions. I can challenge the existence. Is this really an emergency? Come on here. Is this really an emergency? That's what the vote is. The Supreme Court is looking at the reverse question was, let's assume it's an emergency. We won't go there. But even if it is, the IEEPA statute doesn't say the president can impose tariffs. And since trade is a congressional power under the Constitution, there is a general sense that Congress can only delegate that power specifically. And unless it's delegated specifically, the administration can't take that action. And that's the core argument in the case. And I think, as the lower courts have found, that's a pretty powerful argument. The statute doesn't mention tariffs, ergo the president can't use IEEPA to impose tariffs. So I think, it's going to be argued on Wednesday, and the court watchers who are good at this stuff will watch the argument and then give us their take on it. But I think the statutory argument is very solid. I'm a signatory to an amicus brief making this very point to the court that Congress did not delegate tariff powers to the president because we don't want one person to have the ability to impose taxes on the entire global economy without any legislative check.
It's absurd on the face of it. And given the history of this country, the notion that of all the powers that the founding fathers would not have given to the president would have been tariff authority, right?
Right.
Given what happened with our own experience leading up to the revolution. And it's what makes it even more of an outrageous claim, just given our own history in the founding. And I just want to say, Senator, just thank you so much for your leadership on this. I mean, among the things that for people to realize is that we have now 23 states engaged in this fight to invalidate the tariffs. We had more congressional signatories on the amicus brief than on any other amicus brief. The Congress and sovereign states in this country have really rallied against this because they're doing so much harm to the people and the economy in their states and with your constituents that it's been great to see this part of democracy flexing its muscle in the way that I think we need to see more of if we're going to continue to triumph over this terrible politics. But I know you got to go. So,
And Simon,
yeah,
one thing,
yeah,
not just states and Congress, Chamber of Commerce,
yeah.
small business organizations all over this country. I mean, they are pointing out how devastating it is. And in my fantasy world, the Supreme Court will quickly rule in our favor, and we'll hand down a ruling on December 16th, which is the anniversary of the Boston Tea Party.
Okay, I got to organize around that, Senator. Thank you for that. Because our community, as you know, has been calling and calling and calling on these tariffs since the beginning of the year. we started asking people to call on the tariffs even before they were implemented in May, and knowing they were coming, right? And to create the case. So I know you can't, I know you've got to go and you're also in your official office, but I know you campaigned this weekend with Abigail Spanberger and the team. How did it feel out there, Senator?
I'm in great energy. An event with President Obama in Norfolk Saturday, a closing rally with Mark Warner and Abigail and I last night in Northern Virginia. We feel really good. I think Virginia believes we have the ability to choose a really good governing path with Abigail, but also send a message that we're the leadoff hitter in this battle for democracy, and we're going to deliver a really, really positive, hopeful message tomorrow.
I'm with you, brother. Thank you so much for how much. Listen, you have made a huge difference. Please continue to have your team. Let us know what we can do to support this work. I do think we have a little bit of momentum here now, and we have to keep pushing. And it's been great to see. We've had tens of thousands of people call and contact their Senate and House offices around the big issues of the day. And the American people are ready to go to fight with us. And our job is now
Indeed.
is to give them the tools to do that. And so, Senator, thank you so much for everything you've done. Congratulations on this hugely important win. And we look forward to working with you to get more in the future.
Simon, thanks for all you do to keep us so engaged, and I look forward to being back.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Thanks, everybody. This was a great conversation with a dear old friend and one of our most important leaders of the moment, Senator Tim Kaine. If you like this conversation, hit like, subscribe to Hopium, however you're watching or listening to this, and keep working really hard, everybody. We've got an election to go win tomorrow. Take care.